Morning, members. It's the appointed time, and we have a quorum. I call to order the meeting of the panel on Manpower today. Agenda item 1. Information papers issued since the last meeting. Since the last meeting, the Secretariat has issued one information paper to members. It is set out on the agenda for members' reference. The next agenda item, items for discussion at the next meeting. The Secretariat has already issued a list of outstanding items for discussion. Please refer to LC paper number CB-11043/2025-01. There is also a list of follow-up actions. That's LC paper number CB-11043/2025-02. The regular meeting in July will be held on the 28th of July. It's a Monday at 10:45 a.m. There will be two discussion items. First, adjustment to the maximum rates of medical expenses under the Employees' Compensation Ordinance and the Pneumoconiosis and Mesothelioma Compensation Ordinance. Second, admission of technical professionals. If members have no objections, these are the items that we're going to discuss in the next meeting. Now, agenda item proper 3. Implementation of the statutory minimum wage. Let's invite the relevant government officials to join us first. Members who would like to speak, please press the request to speak button. Attending this item, we have Mr. Raymond Ho, Deputy Commissioner for Labour. Ms. Catherine Law, Assistant Commissioner for Labour. Ms. Samantha Lam, Chief Labour Officer. Ms. Joyce Chen, Principal Economist. And Ms. Serena Lee, Senior Labour Officer. Welcome. Will Deputy Commissioner walk us through the paper briefly? Thank you. Good morning, members. First of all, I will brief members on the implementation of the Statutory Minimum Wage, or SMW. The Minimum Wage Commission last year completed the last review of the SMW rate. The Commission agreed to use the formula passed by the CE in Council for the review of the SMW rate. In the last review cycle, we reviewed the SMW rate once every 2 years. And so the formula took into consideration the data in 2023 and 2024 in relation to the array of indicators, and the Commission recommended to uprate the MSW from $40 per hour to $42.1 per hour, which represents an increase of 5.25%. The CE in Council accepted the Commission's recommendation, and the adjusted SMW rate took effect on the 1st of May 2025. According to the Commission's estimation, the adjusted rate, that is $42.1 per hour, will benefit about 22,100 to 36,700 employees, accounting for 0.8 to 1.3% of the total labor force. With the adjusted rate, those who were earning a rate that is higher than the SMW rate may also benefit. So we believe that the total number of employees who are benefiting from the new rate might be higher. The Commission, as per the request of the CE, has already adopted the new mechanism, that is the new annual review mechanism of SMW. and the Commission has already kick-started the review of the latest SMW rate using the new mechanism. The target is by the end of February next year, the Commission will submit the latest recommendation on the SMW rate with the approval of the CE in Council. The new SMW rate generated from the new mechanism will take effect on the 1st of May next year. On the implementation of the SMW over the past 2 years, the labor market has remained stable. We're particularly concerned about the low-paid employees. According to the paper, if you look at the data from January to March 2025, excluding those not earning SMW rate as well as live-in domestic workers, the nominal average monthly employment earnings of full-time employees in the lowest decile group increased cumulatively by 6.8% as compared with the period before the implementation of the last SMW rate. After discounting the headline CPIA inflation over the same period, there is a cumulative increase in real terms of 2.4%. The Labour Department has been publicizing the SMW rate extensively. The SMW regime has been implemented for many years, so employees in general understand the relevant requirements. Over the past 2 years, the Labour Department has received consultation cases as well as disputes, and the number of breaches we got remained on the low side. The relevant details are set out in the paper. And in general, employers have been complying with the relevant requirements and the situation is satisfactory. We're happy to take any questions from members. Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. 6 members have asked to speak. I'll read out their names. They will speak in the following sequence: Mr. Peter Xu, Dr. Frankie An, Mr. Chao Shu Chung, Mr. Lai Tong Kwok, Professor Chen Wing Kwong, and myself. 4 minutes for the first round, including questions and answers. Mr. Peter Xu, please. Thank you. The biannual mechanism has now switched to an annual review mechanism. In the past, the government said it was hard to collect figures. But how come the government has been managing to collect data now? That's my first question. Also, according to a report from year 2019 to year 2020, the SMW of outsourced workers is about $10,700. In 2023 to 24, the average wage went up to about $15,200, and there's been an increase. Over the past few years, well, have you been collecting data in terms of the rise of pay of grassroots employees? Also, what is the average pay rise for employees in Hong Kong over the past few years? Deputy Commissioner, I thank the member for the questions. On the first question about the review mechanism of SMW over the past decade or so, we were implementing a biannual review mechanism. The Minimum Wage Commission took into account an array of indicators, and it also consulted extensively the relevant trades. The Commission had a comprehensive discussion, and it is through this mechanism that the Commission reviewed every 2 years the SMW rate. And if we stick to this mechanism, it would take about 2 years to finish one review cycle. Earlier, the CE asked the Commission to review this review mechanism itself to see whether enhancement measures could be implemented. And after the Commission reviewed the review mechanism, it was decided that a new mechanism would be adopted and a new formula will be adopted. There are specific indicators used under this formula, and through the relevant data, the Commission could use the formula to come up with the SMW rate, and that's why the process could be compressed, and this is how we managed to now implement the new annual review mechanism. On the second question, as mentioned in the paper, over the past 2 years, for the lowest decile group, there's been an increase in terms of the average monthly employment earnings. If Mr. Peter Xu wants figures for the past 5 years, we may only be able to provide the information after the meeting. So Mr. Xu asked for the average monthly employment earnings of employees in Hong Kong and also the average monthly earnings of outsourced workers or the grassroots employees in particular. I ask this question because for grassroots employees, we see a significant increase of their pay over the past few years. Well, of course, it's a good thing to have a pay rise for them, but over the past few years, we see a 40% increase of outsourced workers, employees, employment earnings, and also for other types of workers as well. But businesses have been sluggish over the past few years. So I asked for the relevant statistics, and I hope the Labor Department would strike a balance between our economy as well as the affordability of employers. Well, perhaps I'll ask Ms. Lee, the Senior Labor Officer, to supplement. Thank you. Let me give a brief supplement. According to our figures, starting from April 2019, the government for non-skilled workers contract implemented some new measures. After the implementation of the new measures, the hourly wage increased to $45.5 per hour. Discounting the prevailing SMW rate as well as the increase of CPIA, the net increase of the hourly rate was about 14%. Chairman, I'd like to add a few points. About 3 weeks ago, the FEHD at the PAC provided a supplementary information paper. According to them, in year 2019 to 2020, the wage increased from $10,700 to about $15,200 to in 2023. The rise in pay for outsourced workers caused a knock-on effect. And if we only look at the outsourced workers' earnings, well, I believe other type of workers also saw an increase in their pay. So I hope you will take into consideration the affordability of the business sector. Well, administration, please take note of Mr. Peter Xu's concerns. Next, Dr. Frankie An. I have 2 questions. The first about the assessment on employees with disabilities. If you remember, in January 2024, I made an oral question. In 2021, there were only 20 cases. In 2022, 2 cases. And in 2023, 2 cases. I'd like to learn from the administration how come the application number was so low. Was it because the employers in Hong Kong do not need workers with disabilities? Is it because they managed to fulfill the productivity level? Or is it because employers are not aware of the relevant arrangements? If there are only 1 to 2 cases under the scheme, perhaps we don't need such an arrangement, then you can save manpower. If there is such a scheme in place, there must be resources dedicated to it. If there are only 1 to 2 cases, then maybe we can do away with the scheme. Secondly, we now have the new annual review mechanism of SMW. Should there be a change in the composition of the minimum wage commission? In the past, we needed 3 representatives from the employer side and 3 from the employee side, as well as 3 academic scholars. In total, we have 12 members. If there is a more objective formula in place now, will the commission talk to, for example, the catering trade, the security guide trade as well as cleaners and come up with an update of the latest situation of the labor market so that these industries can tell the Commission or the government how they view the new mechanism as well as the situation of people benefiting from the SMW.
Thank you, Chair. Let me first answer the question on the composition of the Minimum Wage Commission, and then I'll let my colleague talk about how disability assessments are made. For the composition of the Minimum Wage Commission, the members come from different sectors, and the respective numbers, or the sectors that compose the membership of the Minimum Wage Commission. As you may understand, there are specific requirements. The Minimum Wage Commission has been in operation for more than a decade. We have members from different sectors. We have some from labor organizations. We also have some representatives of the employer side employing grassroots. We also have academics. We also have some government officials. So essentially, it involves 4 sides. We believe the membership of the Minimum Wage Commission is appropriate at the moment. The composition helps with its exercising of statutory powers. Thank you. Disability assessments. Who is going to answer this question? Ms. Catherine Law. Thank you, Chair. We have conducted a review on the assessment mechanism to see if we need to retain the relevant arrangements. We have consulted the Labor Advisory Board as well as this panel. We have also consulted the Rehabilitation Advisory Committee. We mainly want to strike a balance between making sure there are adequate employment opportunities for the disabled and making it convenient for the disabled to work. If disabled persons want to increase their job opportunities by getting their assessments, it is a good option, and I think in terms of enhancing awareness, I will let my colleague talk about the specific measures we have undertaken. Thank you. We have all along been promoting this mechanism, and we have posters published. We also have promoted specifically to employers and social welfare organizations on the assessments. Apart from enhancing public awareness, we have also provided training to the approved trainers and assessors. Thank you, Chair. I think resource allocation wise, it is appropriate. It wouldn't cause an excessive burden on the Labor Department, right? I believe Dr. An's concern was there are too little cases handled that resources are going to waste. Thank you, Chair. Apart from our staff members monitoring the implementation of the productivity assessments, they actually have other work relating to minimum wage. We will ensure manpower is deployed appropriately to prevent any waste of resources. Thank you. Mr. Chao Siu-chung. Thank you. The minimum wage scheme was put in place since 2011, and before we had 2-year review cycle. And we have been striving for annual reviews to be conducted so that the wages reflect inflation appropriately and in an up-to-date manner. And I thank the government for working on this in the past years. We now have a new annual review mechanism, and we have a formula. To be honest, the formula looks to me to be mainly based on inflation. You did consider productivity, that is the GDP figure, but in the end, I would say the impact of GDP in the formula is insignificant. It is unlikely that the growth rate of the real GDP will play a great part in the adjustment of the statutory minimum wage. I asked the government before, the formula will be reviewed every 5 to 10 years, but 5 and 10 are vastly different. So I want to ask, under what circumstances will the government conduct a review, and how often will you conduct a review? 5 years or 10 years? Or who is going to initiate the review? Who is going to determine the review cycle? Is it the minimum wage commission or otherwise? I also want to ask the Labor Department about the level of statutory minimum wage. The government said all along the goal is to have a wage floor to protect grassroots employees with statutory minimum wage. But what is excessively low wage? I think everyone would have a different definition. And I myself take two angles. When the statutory minimum wage was $28, I have compared that to the median wage. I think that is a valid comparison. We need to compare the figure with the median wage. When the SMW was $28, let me check the median figure then. It was $52.4. So that was 53% of the median wage. With 2-year review cycle, you can see the median income decreasing 37.5. It was a much higher percentage, and it got up to at one point 49%. So for those getting statutory minimum wage, it is the case that it is getting lower in terms of percentage of median wage. And let's also think about CSSA. If we have people, a 2-person household, getting some $10,000, I think you need to be brief, Mr. Chow. Let me finish, please. So they would only get a statutory minimum wage of approximately $400. What is the government's stance on this? When will you think the wage is too low that you will immediately initiate a review of the formula? Thank you. Mr. Raymond Ho, let me give a consolidated response to the questions of Mr. Chow. In the Minimum Wage Commission, we have representatives from different sectors, as said, employee side, employer side, academics. There have been extensive discussions, and in the end, we put in place, in response to feedback given, the new annual review mechanism. And it is indeed the pooling of wisdom that we put in place this new mechanism and the formula. And I think we need to respect the mechanism. It is the first time that we are reporting on the findings of the new mechanism. I think we need to wait for a while to have more findings so that we can review the new mechanism with more figures. And the review will be done by the 4 sides in the Minimum Wage Commission. Then we'll determine the way forward. I think this is an appropriate arrangement. As for what Mr. Chow said about the review of the formula, when we reviewed the old mechanism, it was the chief executive, in accordance with the powers granted under the relevant ordinance, granting the power to the Minimum Wage Commission to review other areas in addition to the review mechanism. And I think it should work like this in future as well. It would be the chief executive calling for a review to be done by the Minimum Wage Commission. Anything to add in relation to excessively low wages? The concern raised by Mr. Chow Siu-chung. I think we should respect the formula. We do note Mr. Chow's concerns and the potential comparison with median wage. But in the new review mechanism, it should be determined by the formula, the statutory minimum wage. Thank you. Mr. Lai Tong-kwok. Thank you. In paragraph 16, the Labor Department said they adopt a multi-pronged enforcement strategy, including having labor officers deployed to conduct workplace inspections to ensure employers in compliance with minimum wage ordinance, but in accordance with paragraph 17, the figures quoted in the paragraph. In 2023 and 2024, 6 and 7 cases involving suspected violations were detected. And during the same period, only 3 and 11 convicted summonses were recorded involving 4 cases. These are few. And I want to ask, how many were detected because inspections were conducted? How many were reported by workers or labor organizations on behalf of the workers? My concern is with the unemployment rate creeping up. Will workers who are being exploited unwilling to speak up? And you are saying the overall state of employers' compliance with the relevant ordinance has thus far been satisfactory. The government should provide more justifications in how you reach this conclusion, because there are few cases. There may be different causes of this. 1, there is underreporting. 2, you are indeed doing well. So I think the government needs to talk about specifically what work you've done, how many inspections you've conducted. I'm also concerned about what is said in paragraph 16. It is said if irregularities are detected, labor inspectors will require employers to take appropriate measures, including immediate payment of wages. It is only essentially as the last resort that the LD will investigate complaints and penalize those responsible. But I don't see why those breaches will be made inadvertently, to be honest. These are all willful breaches. Why didn't you issue a summons right away when one doesn't pay statutory minimum wage? I will now ask the day to answer my questions. Thank you.
Deputy Commissioner, I thank Mr. Lai for the questions as well as his comments. The SMW regime has been in place for over a decade, and all along, we've been attaching importance to our enforcement work. In the first 2 to 3 years, when we first implemented the MSW regime, there were more breaches of the regime because the employers probably did not have a full grasp of the regime, but with more publicity and promotion through inspections and complaints, we have noticed that the number of breaches has been remaining on the low side, and labor inspectors in each inspection looks at the record kept by employers, including the pay record of employees, to see whether employers comply with the MWO. We will continue to carry out inspections, and labor inspectors will check the record to see if the employees are receiving the MSW rate. Well, the cases mentioned here, did you detect those cases, or did you find out about these cases from reports made by employees? Can you tell us a bit about your enforcement strategy? Do you focus on low-paid sectors? I'll ask Ms. Lee, Senior Labor Officer, to tell you about our law enforcement strategy, to see if there is more information we can provide to members. Ms. Lee, please. On Mr. Lai's questions, I'd like to add a few points. Our labor inspectors every year carry out special operations targeting low-paid sectors such as elderly care services, security guard services, trade and wholesale services sectors, to see if employers are paying their employees the MSW rate. Mr. Lai asked about the few cases set out in the paper. We detected the cases from complaints we received as well as the inspections we conducted. During our inspections, we will ask the employers that breached the law to make rectifications. Depending on whether there is any information available as well as evidence and witnesses available, we initiate prosecutions. In year 2024, a gym coach as well as a salesperson were involved in the cases. In relation to the gym coach, he wasn't able to earn the commission because the relevant employer was not familiar with the calculation, but the employer rectified the problem. And in the other case, because of undesirable sales, the salesperson did not receive the MSW rate. Our colleagues will continue to work hard through a multi-pronged approach, including workplace inspections, and also through complaints. We will follow up on all the cases. Mr. Lai, I have a follow-up question. Under the prevailing legislations, if an employer does not comply with the requirement to pay his employees the MSW rate, do you have to prove that the employer willfully defies the law? Or is it that as long as you can prove that the employer fails to pay the MSW rate, then you can instigate prosecution? Deputy Commissioner, please be brief. I thank Mr. Lai for the questions. Underpayment of SMW or breaches of the MSW requirement is tantamount to wages in arrears or underpayment of wages. So under the employment ordinance, this is an offense. The burden of proof is the same. We have to prove that the employer does so willfully and that there isn't a reasonable justification for that. Next, Professor Chen Wing-Kwong. I have 3 questions. First, the current MSW rate is $42.1 per hour. We often hear that employers have been finding it hard to recruit workers, even with an hourly rate of $80. So is it still meaningful for the government to work to forestall excessively low wages? Also, under the existing mechanism, say an employer works every day, 8 hours per day and 26 days per month, then the monthly rate will be about $17,500. So $8,000 is not enough for an employee to make ends meet. Will you consider adopting an indicator that is to ensure the living quality of employees to calculate the MSW rate? Also, with a shift of people's spending habits as well as the external environment, local businessmen are facing a lot of difficulties in terms of their operation. After the implementation of the new annual review mechanism, have you assessed the impact on SMEs or business operators? Have you also come up with the cost for employers so that you can achieve a win-win situation for both the employers and employees? Deputy Commissioner, one policy objective for the SMW regime is to forestall excessively low wages. At the same time, we have to ensure that the SMW rate will not unduly jeopardize Hong Kong's labor market flexibility and our economic growth. So we need to strike a balance between both. We have had the SMW regime in place for a decade or so. We think that we have been able to strike a balance in this regard, and it has been able to forestall excessively low wages. It has been serving its function. Also, it serves as a safety net. It may not necessarily reflect the overall wage level of workers in Hong Kong. Instead, it serves as a safety net to prevent excessively low wages. Professor Chen asked whether we will take into consideration employees' living quality in the future. Well, I think at this stage we have to adhere to the new mechanism. The CE in Council has accepted to adopt a new formula as well as to implement the new annual review mechanism of SMW. What matters is we hope that we will be able to accumulate experience and data after the implementation of the new review mechanism. Then we will see whether there is room to further enhance the mechanism. As to the impacts on enterprises, let's see if the principal economist has anything to add. Principal economist, please. Well, we focus on the formula. The formula was studied by the Minimum Wage Commission. It is a consensus reached by members of the Commission. There are 2 parts to the formula. First, we ensure that workers can keep their spending power because we look at the headline CPIA. Also, we ensure that with good economic conditions, employees can share the fruit of economic success. We see that there is a lower bound of 0 in the second part, and the upper limit is kept at 1. This can, to a certain extent, enable enterprises to better adapt to any pay increase. So the formula plays the role in striking a balance between the interests of employers and employees. I have a follow-up question. Just now, the administration mentioned about a safety net. That is, we want employees to be able to maintain a certain living quality. If that's the case, how come businesses have been failing to recruit workers even with an hourly rate of $80? Is it because the data collected was wrong and the $42.1 per hour is not just? Well, the business sector has been saying that they have been failing to recruit employees even with an hourly rate of $80. Then I think we need to review the way we conduct the survey. What I want to ask is the MSW rate meaningful? And can we achieve a win-win situation for both the employers and employees under this regime? Deputy Commissioner, we understand that we have to consider both employers and employees under the regime to prevent excessively low wages. And at the same time, we have to ensure that there isn't any impact on the labor market and economic growth. We see that the formula has been able to serve all these functions. As mentioned, we have just implemented the new review mechanism. We've had discussions about this, and we have agreed to adopt the formula. Let's give it some time. Let's allow the mechanism as well as the formula to run for some time, then we will review whether there is room to further enhance the mechanism. Well, the formula is right, but are the data collected wrong? How come businesses have been saying they can't recruit workers with an hourly rate of $80? You set the MSW rate at $42.1 per hour. If I work 26 days per month, I'll only get some $8,000. And that's not enough to even pay the rent. That's why many people are applying for CSSA instead. Also, our SMW rate stands at $42.1 per hour. We are a prosperous society, and we're telling people that the SMW rate is so low. Do you know how much it costs to hire a dish cleaner? It's impossible for you to hire a dish cleaner with just $8,000 per month. I believe the Labor Department has heard what Professor Chen Wing-Kwong said. He mentioned about the excessively low SMW rate and how a balance should be struck. I hope the Labor Department can take note of that. Next, Mr. Kwok Wai-keung. I'd like to thank the current term government. We've shifted from a biannual mechanism to an annual mechanism. We've been calling for an annual review mechanism for years. In the past, under the biannual mechanism, people had to suffer from inflation for 2 years, and then they could catch up under a new SMW rate. Now, with the new annual review mechanism, people could suffer less, but still, it does not address the problem entirely. In year 2021, the rate was frozen. And so the inflation rate between 2019 to 2021 was not taken into consideration. So the rate that we arrived at was lower than it's supposed to be. And also, we're talking about 1.3% of all employees who are benefiting from the SMW rate. It's about 30,000 people. That's not a lot. Also, some say that we shouldn't uprate the SMW rate because businesses have not been doing well. From the businesses' perspectives, this is clear, but from the labor unions' perspectives, we of course think from wage earners' perspectives. As mentioned, between 2019 to 2021, there was inflation, but you did not take that into account because there was a freeze on the SMW rate. To ensure employees working or living quality, we have to offer more protection to them. I hope that you can listen to our views. Also, we have the new formula because we are implementing the new annual review mechanism, but the formula, in my view, is not perfect. Only about 20% of the economic success is shared by all employees. As the Deputy Commissioner said, I think we need to have a timely review of the new mechanism. Also, I think the percentage should be increased in terms of the success of our economy shared by employees. Some members said the SMW rate is lower than the CSSA received. Just now, Mr. Charles Liu Chung mentioned about a 2-member CSSA household. Let's say a household receives about $7,000 of SMW rate, but then the CSSA is higher than that. So please see how you can review this.
Thank you, Chair. I would also like to thank Mr. Kwok for his comments. Let me give you my perspective here. For the SMW, it provides a wage floor against excessively low wages. So some are concerned about wages being low, but then there are multiple factors at play. We can't really compare general market wages with SMW workings. We have an economic growth factor in the formula. As said, I will keep an open mind. I think we should wait until the formula is in operation for a while. The new annual review mechanism has run for a while. Once we have more figures, once we have accumulated experience, we will have a more solid basis for us to determine our way forward. Thank you. All right, it's now my turn to speak. We have changed the review cycle from 2 years to annually. The labor unions agreed with this because we had a freeze during the pandemic, and for 4 years, the rate of statutory minimum wage has not been increased. If we have increased during the pandemic, we would have accounted for the increase in wages in terms of inflation, but we didn't have that. Many members said that we should share the fruits of economic growth, but we have a ratio that is too low at the moment. It's just 20%. And we should have 0.3% increase in the economic growth factor. We have had in the past 10 years, some years, because of the pandemic, having a relatively low figure if it was factored into the formula. Now we only have a relatively insignificant increase of 0.3%, so it's likely that we'll see zero in economic growth factor in later years. So if we have 3 to 4 years of zero being the economic growth factor, this factor is practically non-existent. If that is the case, will the government initiate the review right away? Because if the factor is added but it is always zero, it's meaningless. As for enforcement, I want to ask if you have taken enforcement against enterprises that have imported workers. I do understand that some enterprises may need to import workers because they have a manpower shortage, but then we do understand some imported workers are only earning $12,000, and if they work for 26 days a month and 11 to 12 hours per day, if they work overtime, they may be earning less than $42.1 per hour. I know that you have some officers deployed in inspecting the operations of imported workers. So on top of the regular inspections, will you make sure to look into whether they are being paid statutory minimum wage in your inspections? So I want to ask about the details of enforcement to provide adequate protection to imported workers. Thank you. Deputy Commissioner. For the formula, it is as the chairman said, with the Minimum Wage Commission designing the formula, they have considered this formula to apply for the long term in different stages of the economic cycle. In some years, we may have higher inflation, some lower. It's the same for the economic growth factor. I believe the Minimum Wage Commission suggested this formula with consideration to various factors so that in different situations the formula can apply well. And I note one of the references made was the trend growth rate of the real GDP in the latest decade. And we did say in our paper this figure is 1.1%. The Financial Secretary estimates the growth rate of the real GDP for this year to be higher than the trend growth rate of the real GDP in the latest decade of 1.1%. I think in general the economy grows larger than 1.1%. So I think we should see a positive economic growth factor, but we should wait until we have more data before we call for a review of the formula. As for inspections, we have several teams of labor officers or labor inspectors conducting inspections at enterprises that engage imported workers specifically, and we look into different things when conducting inspections. That would include compliance with statutory minimum wage. Thank you. Alright, all members have spoken for the first round, at least those who have pressed the request to speak button. We have Mr. Chao Siu-chung having pressed the request to speak button, wanting to speak for the second round. If there are no other members who want to speak, the discussion for this item will end after Mr. Chao Siu-chung has spoken. I'll assign a 3-minute time limit for the second round, Mr. Chao Siu-chung. Thank you, Chair. I want to ask the Deputy Commissioner some follow-up questions on when wages are determined to be excessively low. This is a policy goal, so I think you should be monitoring the situation closely. You should do something when the wages are excessively low. The Deputy Commissioner said we should respect the formula. We should follow the formula for some time, and that should prevent against excessively low wages. But I have put in some numbers in the formula. So if we have the past figures factored into the formula, you can see the figures are quite low. The annual rate of adjustment is actually similar to what is found when we had a 2-year review cycle, but the problem is it will deviate from the median wage gradually And I think with this formula, we will have a gradually lower percentage of minimum wage in the median wage. And if we look at other places, experiences, in the UK, it's 60% in Australia, it's 59%. They are much higher than the figure in Hong Kong. I understand you want to wait for some time to see how the formula works, but when will you think a review is due? Thank you. Deputy Commissioner. Thank you for your concern, member. I think we should take a macro perspective. We shouldn't look at a single indicator or a percentage in comparison to the median wage. The Minimum Wage Commission will review the implementation of the review mechanism of the statutory minimum wage in future still. And as I said, there are multiple factors at play that factors into the median wage figure. I don't think a direct comparison is appropriate. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. That ends the discussion of this agenda item. I thank the officers who have attended the discussion of this item. I hope that the administration can heed the feedback given by members. Let's go into the second agenda item. Latest developments in the employment services of the Labor Department. I will now ask the officers to come inside the conference room. Members who wish to speak, please press the request to speak button. Right. We have in attendance today 5 officials. Mr. Raymond Ho, Deputy Commissioner for Labor Administration, Ms. Jade Wong, Assistant Commissioner for Labor Employment Services, Ms. Karen Fong, Senior Labor Officer, Employment Services Operation, Ms. Nancy Tang, Senior Labor Officer, Youth Employment, and Ms. Sharon Low, Senior Labor Officer, Greater Bay Area Youth Employment. Deputy Commissioner, can you brief members on the paper? Sure. Let me first brief members on the employment services provided to job seekers, employers, and various groups. We have employment services centers across the territory. We also have specific recruitment centers for some industries. We also have telephone employment service center. We also have services available online. These services are therefore quite accessible to the public. The services are also quite comprehensive. We have also organized various types of job fairs. We have also district level job fairs at the district's employment centers, allowing face-to-face interviews between employers and employees to be conducted. Let me highlight some specific measures. In last year's policy address, we had some enhancement measures put in place for the GBA-YES, Greater Bay Area Youth Employment Scheme, and these enhancement measures were put in place in January. We have relaxed the threshold to someone who is aged below 30 and they can hold sub-degree qualifications. We have also increased the allowance to $12,000 per month per young person. We have also introduced some enterprises taking on Hong Kong young people under the scheme to apply for the same number of mainland young people to work in Hong Kong. The maximum period is 18 months. It has helped facilitate exchanges within the Greater Bay Area. As at May this year, we had 195 employed young people under the scheme. We have seen the enhancement measures being quite effective because this is an increase of 178.6% over the same period last year. The LD also implements the YETPU employment and training program. We have relaxed the age threshold from 15 to 24 to 15 to 29. The YETP serves mainly young people, and these are young people who have only sub-degree qualifications or below. We have put in place some enhancement measures. We want the young people to get more GBA work experience, which is why we launched the GBA work experience attachment program in June. We had 22 trainees of the first class commencing attachment last week, and we will disperse subsidies in the period. We also pay for accommodation and other needs of the trainees.
We've also stepped up our youth employment support. Last year, we implemented measures for the employment scheme for the elderly and the middle-aged. And we also have a very popular scheme that's called the Reemployment Allowance Scheme. It was rolled out on the 15th of July last year, and it was very well received. It's been just about a year now, and according to the paper, we have 43,000 participants under the scheme and nearly 21,000 placements. As mentioned by the paper, for participants aged above 60. We have 23% of participants aged 60 or above, and we also have 24% of participants who are females. We hope that we can help the elderly and the middle-aged as well as females to rejoin the workforce. At the same time, we will enhance the employment program for the elderly and middle-aged. It disperses on-the-job allowance to employers. So the above two schemes, they complement each other. On one hand, we provide allowance for job seekers who rejoin the workforce, and at the same time for employers who engage staff who are elderly and middle-aged, they get allowance as well. It is expected that by Q1 next year, that is after we've implemented the Reemployment Allowance Scheme for about 1.5 years, we will have a midterm review. We will look at the relevant figures and see whether there are more appropriate measures, and we will determine the way forward for the scheme. As for the other employment programs, we have ongoing programs that take care of the ethnic minority as well as the employees with disabilities. We're happy to take members' questions. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. We have 5 members who've asked to speak. They are Professor Chen Wing-Kwong, Mr. Charles Shu-chung, Mr. Kenneth Leung, Dr. Frank Yan, Deputy Chair, and myself. 4 minutes for each member, including questions and answers. Professor Chen Wing-Kwong, please. I'd like to ask about unleashing the potential labor force. I'm happy to see that the administration has rolled out a number of measures to unleash the labor force. However, I believe we have all noticed that since the implementation of the supplementary labor importation scheme, a number of employers have engaged imported labor, and that affects local employment. A number of women said that in the past they would do 1 to 2 hours of part-time work after their children had gone to school to help make ends meet. However, after the implementation of the supplementary labor importation scheme, a lot of enterprises hire imported labor nowadays, and local workers, they fail to find part-time jobs, and a lot of women can now only be full-time housewives. How can the administration ensure that the supplementary labor importation scheme will not affect the local employment? And also, on the employment program for the elderly and middle-aged, I agree that the administration should provide on-the-job training allowance for employers to encourage them to hire elderly or middle-aged people. However, are there ways to prevent employers from dismissing these employees after they've got the allowance? Has the administration received any complaints or cases like this? Deputy Commissioner. The second question about the employment program for the elderly and middle-aged, I'll ask the Assistant Commissioner to reply. Now, on the first question about the supplementary labor importation scheme, our government has been ensuring local employment for local workers. Now, for each case or application under the supplementary labor importation scheme, we ask local employers to, after fulfilling certain requirements, hold local recruitment for 4 weeks. And we have recently enhanced the scheme. We have made public the relevant names of employers to enhance transparency. We are also doing this to encourage local employers to look for jobs. If during the recruitment period any suitable candidates are identified, employers will have to hire them. If the employers fail to do so, we will reject their applications. And for the coming year, we will not process the applications submitted by the relevant employers. Also, after the imported labor or worker has reported duty, well, I have to stress here the employer cannot replace local workers with imported labor. This is a serious breach. Simply put, if an employer, after engaging imported labor, the serving employers will continue be engaged. If you decide to lay off any employees, you have to first dismiss the imported workers. I encourage employees to make any reports of breaches. We will follow up on each complaint case. We will deal with each complaint in a very serious manner. If employers import workers and that makes their employees lose the jobs, then this is not acceptable. On the employment program for the elderly and middle-aged, Ms. Wong, please. Thank you. According to this program for the elderly and middle-aged, employers will have to undertake not to lay off any existing employees because of hiring new employees. And the Labor Department, when we look at each case, well, after we approved the case, we will check to see the employers comply with the relevant requirements. As at March 2025, according to our tracking survey, employees under the EPEM, there are over 80% of participants who stayed in their job for over 4 months, and we have over 60% of participants who stayed in their jobs for about 6 months. We will check with the employers if we get any complaints about employers dismissing their staff under the scheme after they have received the allowance. Professor Chen, how do you monitor the situation and how do you enforce the law? Say I am an employer. After I've hired an imported worker, I will no longer place any ads on newspapers to recruit local workers. How do you monitor the situation? Deputy Commissioner, we have labor inspectors. Say an employer has successfully hired an imported worker. We will adopt a risk-based approach and we do surprise checks. I'm afraid I cannot disclose the relevant details here, but of course our labor inspectors will follow up on each case. We have to ensure that even after an imported worker is engaged, we have to ensure that there is the right balance of local workers and imported workers. And we have been conducting inspections. We do not interview the imported workers. Instead, we talk to the local employees. We ask them whether there are situations where local employees are laid off because imported workers are employed. Also, we have a report hotline. We welcome any reports or complaints from labor unions or affected employees. If local employees are laid off because of imported workers, we will definitely follow up on the complaint. Next, Mr. Chao Xiu-chung. Thank you, Chairman. Over the past few years, we've seen an increase in terms of the overall unemployment rate. In particular, the unemployment rate has risen quite significantly for a few sectors. The Labor Department's employment services are crucial in the midst of the unemployment. So I hope the Labor Department will strive for excellence. Paragraph 17 of the paper mentions that the Labor Department strives to unleash silver productivity, and it will stage about 60 large-scale thematic job fairs that doubles the number in 2024. This is a very good effort. However, I'd like to ask the following questions. In the job fairs, well, for industries that see a high number of imported workers, including catering, retail sectors, will you put in place special measures to talk to the employers from these sectors so that you can identify suitable vacancies for local workers? Now, I have been visiting the IES website of the Labor Department. But the offers are outrageous, according to the recruitment ads there. Some time ago, I saw a post from the construction sector. It's hiring a concrete worker, and the monthly wage is about $15,000. The daily wage is about $1,800. And how is that good enough to hire a concrete worker? Another post is a office assistant come driver. You need a Form 5 educational level with 10 years of work experience. You need to speak Putonghua, and the monthly wage is about $10,000. That's an offer from the retail sector. Well, it meets the minimum wage requirement, but is the offer reasonable? When employers put up ads on the website, will the Labor Department talk to them to discuss the reasonableness of the offer? Also, will you ask the employers to make public the names of the companies? I know that you have put in place a new measure for companies that engage imported labor, you will ask them to make public their company names. But will you ask these employers to make public their names as well?
Deputy Commissioner, thank you for your questions, member. Say for job fairs or how we handle vacancies, I'll let my colleague take those questions. We've been calling for employees from different sectors to list their vacancies on our IES website. And the IES website shows vacancies, 99% of which should have the employer's names published. There is also contact information listed. We invite job seekers to reach out to employers directly to arrange for interviews, and I'll let my colleagues supplement my answers and take other questions. Ms. Jade Wong, thank you. For job fairs, we have for some industries held district-based job fairs apart from large-scale job fairs. We held 622 job fairs last year for, say, F&B industry, retail industry, and the construction industry. We have recruitment centers. For the retail and F&B industries, we have regularly job fairs held to facilitate the information exchange. Last year, for the different centers, 670 job fairs were held. Close to 20,000 people had interviews on site. Alright, what about the second question on the ads of job vacancies featuring unreasonable offers? At least unreasonable to ordinary people's eyes. Have you played a gatekeeper role, or are you just listing the ads as they are entered? Thank you, Chair, for your further questions. Once we have received information about a job vacancy, we need to make sure it complies with the relevant legislation such as Statutory Minimum Wage Ordinance and the discrimination ordinances. We will also look at the wage distribution in general. But if there are reports of unreasonably low offers, once we've got wind of such reports, we will liaise with employers to see why the offers are so low. Excuse me, I actually talked about ads that did not have employers' names published, the two ads. So will you put in place a requirement that all employers publishing ads on Interactive Employment Services website to have their names published? I do note the member's suggestion. I think the direction that we want to take is to have the names of employers published in general, because 99% of the employers already have their names published. We will review this to see if we should make this a requirement. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Kenneth Leung. Thank you, Chair. In the last few years, in the policy addresses, we have seen them touch on the GBIYES. There have been multiple enhancement measures put in place, and I can see the government responding to the changes in circumstances in recent years. For the enhancement measures put in place in the last 2 years, for the two-way exchange of young people, as well as the relaxation of threshold to accommodate those with sub-degree qualifications. What is the effectiveness so far of such measure? Do you have any figures on those? And for the 195 people, I want to know about the distribution of academic qualifications and what jobs are they going into specifically. As for the YETP, we have incorporated some GBA work experiences, and I very much welcome this because it increases exposure for young people. According to the paper, mid-June this year, we have 22 trainees commencing workplace attachment in Guangdong province. I want to ask what enterprises are providing the relevant experiences and what positions are they offering? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kenneth Leung, for your comments and questions. I will now ask Ms. Wong to provide more details. Thank you, Chair. As Mr. Leung said, after enhancing the GBA-YES, we have some mainland young people working in Hong Kong. It has only been a short time that we have implemented this enhancement measure. As at May, we only had one young person coming to work in Hong Kong. When we have more updates, we will report to the council on this. As for the 195 employed young people, we have 11 sub-degree holders. We have 400 odd vacancies out of the 1,700 odd that would welcome sub-degree qualification holders to apply. Right now, we only have 11 sub-degree holders. We will continue to promote to employers the YETP so that more employers will engage young people, especially sub-degree holders. As for the GBA Work Experience Attachment Program under the YETP, we had the first class of 22 trainees going to the Guangdong province last week. They are working as platform assistants, customer service assistants, or club assistants. They are mainly located in Foshan. Foshan for this cohort. Thank you. Dr. Aman Yu. Thank you, Chair. I have 3 questions. The Labor Department has been doing much in their centers and they have been working hard to hold job fairs. But from the figures of the number of visitors, it seems that we need to be more proactive in making sure we can match employers to employees. And we should have more figures in order to instill confidence in the public that we are doing effective work in job matching. This should be a KPI for the Labor Department because with recruitment centers, you want to be matching employers and employees. So I think the successful rate of job matching should be collated and it should be set as a KPI. That's my first point. Next, youth employment start. Youth employment start's vision is to help young entrepreneurs start up their businesses. But it seems that with many years of work in youth entrepreneurship, we now have many incubators outside the government. So I think youth employment starts do not play as much of a role as promoting youth entrepreneurship. So do we need to have a youth employment start in Langham Place because its rent is relatively high? Do they need the harbor view? I asked the government about this because they wanted the premises to be accessible and that the view should be pleasant enough for investors. As we are no longer having youth employment starts mainly to provide support for youth entrepreneurs, why not have them move to other premises? Because mostly they are used to support young students and for school visits to be made. As for recruitment centers, we now have recruitment centers for 3 industries, and we have youth employment starts. We have 2 of them. And I have been calling for us to respond to the latest situation to have recruitment centers for women, elderly persons, and ethnic minorities instead, because when I go to the recruitment centers these days, we see more staff members than employees, and honestly, the more tech-savvy employees would go online to search for the vacancies. So I think it's time for us to transform the recruitment centers. Thank you. Deputy Commissioner, regarding support for young people, we have enhanced youth employment services in January. We now provide even more comprehensive services. So people from 15 to 29, these young people, regardless of their academic attainment, there are services for them. And I would say appropriate services. We have the GBA-YES, we have the YETP, we also have the youth employment starts. The goal is consistent, that is to serve the group of 15 to 29. So we now have a more comprehensive scope. Dr. Ammon, you asked about specifically youth employment starts. They are comprehensive resource centers and they are very popular among young people. Employment services have been provided in relation to sale of merchandise, and these have been very popular among youth or the general public alike. With the integrated support services provided by the YESs, they are necessary. I think the chairman would, or the deputy chairman would agree with that. It is just a concern of whether the premises should be located in Langham Place or Metro Plaza. But I would say that we have already created a brand by having the 2 centers located in the 2 shopping malls. But I also understand the deputy chairman's concern that we should have regards to the cost. We will review that. We should also review the relevant figures, as the deputy chairman said, and see if we need to collect such figures and publish such figures. We have had some hired, but then we know of such hirings may not be enough. We may need follow-up interviews. So the most recent figures may not reflect truly the situation. But I do note the deputy chairman's concerns. I note his suggestion on whether we can collate more employment figures.
Dr. Frankie An, I also asked a question about transforming and upgrading the centers. Deputy Commissioner, we have integrated centers that offer job support as well as in-depth personal counseling services. We want to make use of our support centers to organize district-level job fairs. So our job centers offer integrated support services. For job seekers with special background, should we have dedicated job centers for them? Well, we've heard views about offering more support to the new arrivals as well as the ethnic minority. We have thought about this. We think it is appropriate to have an integrated center that can serve job seekers of different backgrounds. These centers take care of female job seekers as well as other types of job seekers. We have a tight supply of resources now, and we think the current model is appropriate. I agree that we should move with the times, however. In future, if opportunity arises, we will see whether there is room to improve our employment support services. Dr. An? Well, I guess you no longer need the youth center. How come there are 2 centers dedicated for young people, but there isn't a center for females or for the elderly? If you can do away with the 2 centers just for the young people, then more resources will be made available. I think the Labor Department should take note of members' views. Now it's my turn. After I've asked my questions, I'll have Deputy Chair host the meeting. The government has been talking about promoting silver economy. It has put in place many measures to encourage elderly people to rejoin the workforce. Is it that easy for elderly people in Hong Kong to look for jobs? Well, the economy in Hong Kong has been sluggish, and we are seeing a rise in the unemployment rate. There are also industries that engage more imported labor. And we have seen age discrimination in the job market. So is it easy for the elderly and the middle-aged to hunt for jobs? You've been encouraged them to take ERB courses for the post-50s and post-60s. But will they really be able to find a job after completing the courses? I hope the government, when promoting silver economy, it will not just talk the talk, but also put in place measures. There needs to be a comprehensive set of policy initiatives for industries with more imported labor. Will you slow down the importation of foreign workers and save some jobs for the middle-aged and the elderly? Will you, for example, look for enterprises that are willing to hire the elderly so that trainees who have completed the post-60s and post-50s courses, they will be immediately able to find a job after they complete the courses. And these are some ways to promote silver economy. Secondly, I know that the Labor Department has been encouraging employers to hire women or the middle-aged. There are schemes to commend good employers. I was looking at a thematic household survey, number 81 report from the CNSD. I believe the Deputy Commissioner should be familiar with this because that particular report is about digital food delivery platform workers. Apart from touching on food delivery workers, the report provides certain information. For example, it says that currently, only 10% of employees in Hong Kong enjoy flexible work arrangements. Also, according to the report, some employers offer more benefits compared to those set out under the employment ordinance. For example, more childcare leaves, more paternity leaves or maternity leaves, but there are only less than 10% of such employers who offer additional benefits. Does that mean the Labor Department is not doing enough to encourage employers to roll out employment-friendly measures? Will the Labor Department offer allowances or tax concessions for enterprises, including SMEs, so that they can offer more flexibility to their workers, including female workers, so that the middle-aged and the elderly could be engaged? Deputy Commissioner. The first question is about promoting silver economy and encouraging employers to hire elderly and middle-aged. I think it involves different policies. For example, we need childcare services, retraining services, and employment support, and so on. Well, the government has been attaching importance to this. The Deputy Secretary for Administration has been leading the working group on promoting silver economy. Deputy Secretary will continue to look at how the relevant work should be taken forward. The second question is about employment-friendly measures and flexible work arrangement. Our thought is to continue to step up our publicity effort so that we can build a culture where employers will provide more flexible work arrangements or work measures, especially at times when the manpower supply is tight. We want to have more facilitation measures and flexibility for the elderly and the middle-aged so that they can re-enter the workforce. Thank you. Next, Mr. Tang Fei. Thank you, Chairman. I have a comment rather than a question. According to the government's paper, targeting people of different backgrounds and education qualifications, there are different employment support services. The services are quite comprehensive, and these services are rolled out through different channels, including social media platforms. So I think there is adequate employment support. I have a little suggestion here. It has to do with our secondary schools. Currently, we have life career planning for secondary students. The Education Bureau has been working with enterprises, schools as well, and different educational groups. They organize activities in this regard. Some sponsoring bodies, they organize their own career recommendation events. They are not job fairs per se because the students are still at school. They're not hunting for jobs. And they are very similar to the street booths set up by the Labor Department. But the activities organized by schools, of course, they are of a much smaller scale compared to those held by the Labor Department. If the department can work with schools to organize career recommendation fairs, such as job expos or career expo, then it will be very beneficial to students and help them with their career or life planning. I think this kind of events will be very popular among school principals. This is just a suggestion. Thank you. Deputy Commissioner, I thank Mr. Tang Fei for the suggestion. Perhaps my colleagues could supplement afterwards. As far as I understand, the Youth Employment Start has been working with schools, but I thank the member for the suggestion. We'll see whether we can work with the school principals associations to see if we can organize such events. We'll explore this idea further. Thank you. Mr. Kenneth Leung speaking for the second round, 3 minutes including questions and answers. Thank you, Chairman. I'm following up on the questions I asked. Just now, the administration said there is only one intern working under the arrangements for mainland youth to work in Hong Kong in the GBA Youth Employment Scheme. Well, I understand this is only the first year that we are implementing this arrangement. Well, let's not look at the mainland worker who came to Hong Kong. Let's look at those who are not applying for the scheme, then we can adjust the scheme accordingly. I'm not sure if it is because of the lack of appeal of the jobs offered. Is it because there's a lack of support when they come to Hong Kong to work? Will the administration learn about the situation and share with us the information? My second question is about the YETP, the Youth Employment and Training Program. As mentioned, 22 trainees have joined the program. Apart from their day-to-day work, are there activities organized for these trainees? Well, we hope that apart from allowing them to learn about the workplace or workplace culture in the mainland, we want them to have more exchange opportunities with the mainland youth. Are there such arrangements? Deputy Commissioner, I thank Mr. Kenneth Leung for the questions. Now on the GBA Youth Employment Scheme, employers who engage mainland youth or those who engage young people from Hong Kong, we allow them to send their mainland staff to come to Hong Kong as well. We'll listen to the employers' views and see, based on what do they decide, they will send their staff from the mainland to work in Hong Kong. Now, on the 1-month attachment scheme to the mainland, under the YETP, I understand that every weekend our trainees will attend certain exhibitions or exchange with mainland young people to understand the job market in the mainland. We allow the on-the-job training allowance to trainees. I hope that we will make use of the 1-month period. Apart from their day-to-day work, we hope that our trainees would participate in different activities during weekends so that they can comprehensively learn about the lives as well as cultures and development opportunities in the GBA. Does any other member wish to speak? Any other business? If not, we'll wrap up the meeting here. Thank you.